Hello.
Is everybody in full swing now? Are the panelists okay?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. Everyone are in, and yeah, we are ready to start now. Yes, Gutia, you can start now.
Okay. Hello, good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished panelists. I'm pleased to be the moderator of today's event talking about the Sikh Farmers Protest. I am Gauti Sharian, currently intern in the Universal Human Rights Council, and I'm honored to welcome you all and thank you all for your presence. Just a quick reminder of what the situation is in India right now. Well, since September, it is tens of thousands of Indian and especially Sikh farmers who have gathered all around India to protest against 3 new agricultural laws that aim to deregulate India's agricultural industry at the expense of the everyday farmer. And we all know that India is like a great store and is very agricultural, so it is very at their expense. But if it was just about that, the situation wouldn't be that serious. And the situation is alarming because some Hindu nationalist officials see with this protest the possibility to be more violent against those farmers because of their origin. And this comes with an ongoing deterioration of their human rights, and especially against minorities. I'm not just talking here about Sikhs, but also Muslims, Christians, or whoever is not Hindu. And it is discriminations, it is arrests. There are several thousands of arrests. So that's a very appalling situation. We must change that. And I'm sure that our panelists today will make you understand what is at stake with this situation. Let me introduce them. First, we will have Dr. Sania Munir, Director of the International Human Rights Movement, Assistant Professor at School of Integrated Social Sciences. And I can highlight that her research interest includes government and politics, Pakistan movement, armed conflict studies, and also gender-based violence. So thank you, Dr. Sania Munir, for being here. We'll also have Mrs. Anna Christina Katu, who is an experienced teacher with master's degrees in advanced theater practice and a diploma in scriptwriting from the British Film Institute. Thank you, Mrs. Katu, for being here too. Then we will have Mrs. Rama Ben, a human rights activist, and also currently intern at the Universal Human Rights Council. And we'll finish with Mr. Rana Basharat Ali, the chairman of the International Human Rights Movement. So let's start this discussion, and I'll now give the floor to Dr. Sania Munir for her presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much. And once again, I'm very much happy to be part of this forum, and thank you very much for rendering me this opportunity. This topic was very close to my heart, and it was like the Kashmir issue, because I'm also working very actively for raising devices against the violation of Kashmiris by the Indian occupation. So I will take, I will give my take. Basically, when we talk about the Sikh farmers of Punjab and the legislation which was given by the Indian government. So the first, that was the grasp the danger, when the parliament passed the 3 controversial bills in a very great hurry. So these acts, most of the time, we can call it like the farmer bills, and these are described as the anti-farmer laws, and the many farmer unions and the politicians from the opposition also mentioned as the mercy of the leaving the farmers at the mercy of the corporate affairs. So I would give you the overview first. Why many farmers are opposing it? Because this bill was passed without a discussion or taking farmer unions into confidence, number one. Second one, the government attempt to deregulate the agriculture sector, and basically it was destroying the living style of the farmers. And you can also, I'm I will also add the one point, like the farmers have the genuine concerns, and the big one is the new rules removed many of their safeguards. More than almost 86% of Indians cultivated farmland is controlled by the smallholders, farmers who own less than the 2 acres are maximum the 5 acres land. So the fear that they just don't have enough bargaining power to get the kinds of the prices they need for a decent standard of living when they negotiate to sell their product to larger companies. So I'm not going much into the bills that what was the clauses of these legislations, but I give you a short overview. But what happened when this protest was started? Then the Muditwa, I will use this term, the Narendra Modi far right government has tried to violently suppress them, lashing out at a critique in a way that exposed just how close the world's largest democracy is to becoming authoritarian state, because most of the time Indian government claimed to be a very secular state. So again, I will also add one more point. When protesters in Delhi have been surrounded by the barricades and the barbed wire and had their internet, water, and food supply cut off, and more than 100 farmers have gone missing. So such sort of human rights violation one can observe in the farmers' protest. I will also add one more point related to the Human Freedom Index. If we will see, then India stood 111 of 160 among the 168 two countries in Human Freedom Index. Why it is why it stood like that? Because a country where Hindus come first. Because BJP and its allies are using a classic divide and rule tactics, which they have copied from the British colonialists, but it is a part of a broader strategy to turn India into a Hindu theocracy. So I will go with the title because it was mentioned like Sikh considered not patriotic by the Hindu, what we will say, Hindu extremists. So the government sees India as a country for the Hindus, first and foremost, because all others are considered as a second-class citizens who must continually prove their loyalty. So Hindu nationalists like to say that the Sikhs are the part of the Hindu umbrella and therefore are the integral part of the India, unlike the Muslims and the Christians. But recent events have exposed the hollowness of their claim, and we all can observe this in the former protests. So India is a multi-faith country being transformed into a country where Hindus are the top tier citizens and everyone else is below them on the pecking order. So anyone who disagrees is painted as the anti-national. So last year, we can also see that when the Indian Muslim protested specifically against the law that aimed to exclude the many Muslims from citizenship, so they were accused of being potential terrorists working for the Pakistan. So during the pogrom in the Delhi in January 2020, we can say that framed as a riot by the many media outlets. The police either stood by or took part. So we can not only point out with the Sikh community, but also with the Muslims, because we are clearly witnessed by the Indian atrocities in Kashmir, how they are using the different tactics. They are using the rape as a war strategy. So such sort of all this. So why they are tagging the Sikhs with the, with these what you will say they are tagging the Sikhs as the anti India, because Sikhs are very much jump into that farmer protest due to the few reasons. Number one, I will explain why the Sikhs joined this protest, and later on they tagged by the Indian extremists. So the RSS and the BJP government, with the help from its campaigners like the I will name the Kangana Runawat, so are trying to portray the Punjab Sikh farmers as Khalistani terrorists, but it won't be easy. So that the Sikh farmer youth are not only more educated, they're also globally spread out and can giving filtering reply to the Hindutva army. So if the RSS and the BJP allow their loose cannons to go after them, as they did against the Kashmiris after the abrogation of Article 370 without the consent of the Kashmiris, without taking them into the trust. So India as a nation will be in a danger. So this is a great danger for the Indians as well. So the Sikh farmers can fight the battle better than any other state framing community in the country. And we can also see how this protest took great media coverage, I will say. So, and again, dignity of the labor was the important aspect, the reason of joining the Sikh community, this protest, because Sikh farmers have taken up the cudgels is to defend the labor, which is accorded the great dignity in Sikhism, and it has the roots in the relative undermining of the casteism among the Sikhs. And again, we cannot ignore the fact of the living contrast of the Sikhs, because Sikhism lays stress on the Sarbat da Bhala. Basically, these terms refer to working towards common good of all, and I will use the second term is the kar seva. So it's referred as the doing physical work for the common good. So these two ideas are part of the Guru Granth Sahib, so spiritual ideology, which runs counter as the ideology of which countering the ideology of the Hindutva force. So the Sikh Gurus established the concept of the dignity of the labor at a time when the idea was almost unknown to the Brahminical, spiritual, social, and political ideology. So I would say Sikh are more patriotic with India, because Sikh, maximum sacrifices are given by the Sikhs. And secondly, Sikhs do not support the Khalistan movement, only the diaspora, misleading the local population, because most of the Sikhs are sacrificing their lives, and the Sikhs are demanding only the regional autonomy. I will stress on this word. They are demanding on the regional autonomy rather than the separate state. And there are many reasons why the Hindus are blaming them. Like their religious programs are always horrifyingly common in India. And we are also witnessed the year 1984. And this year we can see the year of the Sikh genocide is firmly etched into our collective memory. And then we cannot ignore the Hindutva, which is the Hindu nationalist ideology that underpins the Modi's government. BJP have already started holding the mansing rallies outside the Sikh places of the worship. So all these are the tactics and effective figures bring the clarity in someone's minds, like the Sikhs are sporting only due to the three bases. One is on their living contrast. Second one is on the dignity of the labor, and the third one is due to their unity with the community. And the reason, because BJP and RS, they are using all these tactics as they are using against the Kashmiris for the violation of the human rights. And I will not ignore the fact of election campaigns, because we are witness, being a neighboring country, they always use these tactics when there is when elections are near, and they always campaigned on the basis of the religion, because before this, Indians are claiming, the Indian government claims this one is a secular state, then why they're going to interfere in the religious matters, and why they are using the religion as a tactic, and why they're not going to put it separate from the state affairs. So Sikh community joined the farmers protest, and but RSS and BJP are using it as their election campaign tactics, and they're using the terms of the Khalistani terrorist and all this. Otherwise, there is no reality lying among all this. Why I'm saying this? Because I conducted a lot of interviews from the Sikh community who are living in different countries, and also living in India. So thank you very much. That was my part.
Thank you, Dr. Sania Munir, for your wonderful presentation and for highlighting the fact that India is the super largest democracy, but is now turning to the worst democracy in a way. And as the people in India who stands different political position, are rejected by the nationalist official. Thank you again for your presentation. And we are now moving to Mrs. Anna Cristina Ketu. You now have the floor.
Hello to everyone. Can you hear me properly, by the way? Everything okay with the sound? Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I would like to thank you for having me here in order to participate as a speaker to this event. And I would like to thank particularly my good friend, Mr. Muisi, for inviting me, because he knows that I like sharing my ideas around different topics related with human rights. So starting up, I would like to mention that human rights violations in India are very important subjects in our society nowadays, because if we relate what's happening with the political situation of India around us, we cannot ignore what's going on. It's remarkable to mention that communal violence has been constant for the past 5 years up to a very high level. And this is something that still continues nowadays. And talking about 5 years of constant violation is a big amount of time. And if we consider the fact that there is still something going on, this has to be highly took into account. So official data reveals that 700 outbreaks of communal violence happened only during 2016. So imagine from that time until now how many outbreaks might have been, or they will also be, that we don't even know the number. So the main reason that causes those violent outbreaks is mostly religion. Based on what you also said about the agricultural sector, it can be related with the fact of religion, because most of the victims of those outbreaks of violence, based on official data, were Muslims. So authorities in India cannot provide any protection from attacks towards the religious minorities. And it seems that they cannot even encourage like the attackers to stop doing what they're doing at the moment. And as a result, the government has to establish legislations to protect human rights of each individual that belongs to any religious minority. It's also important to mention that not only Muslim religious minorities are facing those attacks, but also Christians are at the same position. So violence is always there. So since the independence of India in 1947 until recently, the human rights related with religion are not protected. So violence is mainly related with nationalism in India. So this is the main cause. National and state laws are used to violate the religious freedom of minorities and communities, but very few of those laws are well known. So they are not established within the society and they're almost ignored. So violence has occurred under both the Congress Party and the Bharatiya Janata Party of the government. Now, I would like to mention a bit about the history and the background of the religious minorities in India, because it's very important to see where they're coming from and why their human rights are now in this violent condition. So many religious minorities in India also face varying forms of intersectional discrimination. For example, there are the Dalit Muslims and the Christians, or other religious minorities who are also linguistic minorities or belong to indigenous communities, with such challenges exaggerating for minority women. While India's religious minorities face varying degrees of violence and discrimination, communal violence has a particular target on Muslims and to a less degree towards Christians, who also face varying degree of social, economical, cultural, and legal discrimination. So as we can see, the Christians are affected to a high level as well as a religious minority, so their human rights cannot be protected up to any level. So findings report and draw attention to high levels of poverty among Muslims and among people that they're interested into any professions related with agricultural activities, which is something that now the government is not going to establish and protect with any kind of laws. So this limited representation in the country's political and public life from Muslim, it's a problem, and is not offering them the right, the human right to be present because of the religious orientation. So Muslims continue to suffer for the lack of access to healthcare. They have a low educational attendance, and then they are not available to get any economic help from the government, particularly for people that they're living within the city. This occurs alongside ongoing social and cultural discrimination, such as obstacles to buying or renting property, or representations of Muslims as terrorists, or as people that they are not patriots and they're against the nation in the media and throughout many educational materials. It's remarkable to mention that Muslims from other minorities in India also face institutional discrimination according in relation to law enforcement. Then I would like to mention that in 2015, statistics from the NCRB show that more than 67% of those in India's jails are defendants under trials, and 55% of the population is made up of Muslims, Dalits, and that together are constituting only a combination of 39% of the country's total population. In the wake of terrorist attacks by Islamic extremists, in particular in 2008, attacks in Mumbai, Muslims have increasingly been targeted by police through profiling, staged encounters, and false accusations of terrorists under the cover of anti-terror laws, such as the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So Muslims were mostly accused for being those that they are creating problems because they're considered to be as terrorists and because they can't protect their human rights by any law within India. So the civil society groups have documented systematically and widespread human rights abuses by police, including arbitrary arrests, torture, and extrajudicial killings. It is within the broader context that Muslims in India have been subject to the most serious manifestations of communal riots since patriotism. In many cases, violence has been actively enabled by the failure or even complicity of public official events. Although the majority of the people that they are facing violence and they're not protecting their human rights, and Muslims, Christians also have been highly affected from those attacks since the 1990s. So it is important to see this fact that people from any religious minority are not protected, and this is very, very important because they are focusing on not doing any trials to try to protect a person that comes from a religious minority. They are just dividing the minorities, and even if you're Christian or Muslim, it doesn't say something. It's just the fact that human rights cannot be officially protected from the government, and this is a problem that has been on and is still constantly there. It's important to see that over the years India has seen a number of what have been variously referred to communal violence and communal riots, ranging in severity from minor to very severe events and violent manifestations, always deriving from the lack of human rights and protection towards minorities. It is something that has been happening from the establishment of the independence of India, and it's still something that is going on. So communal violence involves planned and organized acts of violence by members of one community against members of another community with the intent of creating or expressing very harmful injuries to people. So the right activists have argued for a more comprehensive approach to understand communal violence, however, acknowledging the role of political actors who instigate and benefit from these attacks. It is very obvious that there are people that they are taking advantage of the situation within the political world. So that's why the government cannot protect the human rights of people that belong to minorities. And they are trying to sustain this situation in contrast because they believe that this is how it should be, and because they think that this is the correct way of distinguishing the minorities between them. So from my own perspective, I believe that the government should be able to find ways in order to protect the human rights. They should be able to find solutions in order to see how the violation and the acts can be improved and actually try to stop them gradually, because it's a situation that hasn't changed and it's something that it has to change in order to see any development and progress within their society and in relation with any jobs or fields that they may be affected from those violations, because obviously they're happening to a great extent in constant basis and towards people that they cannot prevent it and they don't have the power to do anything else. It's important to mention that there are international organizations that they're fighting for the protection of human rights, but still they haven't been able to find exactly what are the correct regulations, what are the formal laws in order to be established for the government and in order to have them applied within the society in order to avoid those violations in India. Now I'd like to thank you for listening of my speech, and I'm sure that the situation will improve sooner than we think, because I believe that this is a situation related with violence that it should be stopped. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Anna Christina Catu, for your speech, which was really very interesting in the way that it explained to us the limited possibilities offered to Muslims and minorities, generally speaking, concerning political representation or the restricted access to basic services at health or others. So thank you for this and your positive words at the end, that it is not a status, it should not be a status quo and it can change. So next I will now give the floor to Rama Ben. You now have the floor.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here today in this event. As the title stipulates, it is Sikh farmers pushed into the wall by Hindus. And I loved the title of this event, as I cannot find much more accurate description of these acts, these discriminatory acts against Sikh minorities. Although Sikh are the fourth religion in India that existed for 550 years and that constitutes 1.7% of the population, they're still minority, and there is a rising hostility against minorities, religious minorities in India since the majoritarian Bharatiya Janata Party took power in favor of the Hindus majority in India. The Sikh farmers were pushed into the wall not only by invoking the reform of the three farming laws enacted by the government to regulate farming and activities related to agriculture, but also by preventing them from marching and from opposing to those rules by sitting in. They, as we all know, that a sit-in protest war was in stage since the first week of December. Hundreds of thousands of farmers marched and camped on the borders of the capitals, but all measures were aimed at separating them there was no electricity, no water supplies, internet was shut down at that area. Like journalists were prohibited from reaching them. But not only that, there was actually a propaganda, a majoritarian sentiment, the government was trying to mobilize majoritarian sentiment of hatred against Sikhs by invoking hatred in different way. As if we turn to history, there was a Sikh movement in 1980s, 1990s, where they were in favor of Khalistani national movement. The government tried to remind Hindus of that movement by highlighting the event that happened in 26th of January, where a few thousand protesters entered the iconic Red Front in New Delhi and planted a Sikh religious flag in the polls. It was used by the government to reinforce its propaganda against the Sikh and evoked the hatred among different Hindus communities. The government propaganda invoking anti-Sikh hatred succeeded. Social media, we find posts of hatred against Sikh farmers, thousands of posts, but this went international as celebrities around the world tried to take action because they know that this is against human rights, this is against the right to defend themselves, to protest, to take their rights. So people around the world, celebrities try to manifest, but the government was against that, and they invoked an anti-sedition law stating that unknown people creating disaffection. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has stated the Indian nation needs to be protected from foreign destructive ideology. So what the government is doing here is spreading hatred, making chaos, and trying to be afterward the savior who's gonna save the country from this disunity, from this chaos, from this hatred, from this danger. I don't know if this is going to help India maintain its democracy and its difference, because as we all know, India is a melting pot of different minorities, different religions, different cultures, but this is not going to make India what it used to be and what we want it to be. So all these measures the government is taking by by the laws, invoking the reforming laws, and by prohibiting Sikhs from protesting and opposing those rules, which is their own right to protest and to oppose, by trying to spread hatred, is so inhuman, and actions must be made by organizations and international organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramaban, for your very passionate speech. I think everyone here felt that passion in your words, and it was very important stressing the other abuse that comes along with the situation of the Sikhs, not only with the Sikhs, but also the situation of other minorities, of journalists, of whoever is impacted by the human rights abuses in India. So thank you for that. Now I give the floor to Mr. Rana Basharat Ali, who is our last speaker. Mr., you have the floor.
Thank you. And thank you for Moise Mahayodi to giving this opportunity. And thank you to all my fellow speakers to represent in a wonderful way. This is a problem when you have intelligent speakers, so you will not get much to say in the end, because my previous speaker explained in a very good way, especially Dr. Sania and Miss Anna and Ramabel. You deliver a wonderful background about India and about Sikh and about the new law. But I will take this opportunity and I will take you further back, because I believe my colleagues explain very beautifully about the situation. I will take you about 557 years back when the Sikhism started. As we all know, the Sikhism start from the Hinduism. The Guru Nanak Sahib, the leader, the founder person of Sikhism, he was a Hindu. When he died, there was a fight on his funeral, that the Muslim said he is a Muslim leader, so we will do his funeral with a Muslim tradition, and the Hindu said he is a Hindu, so we will do with the Hindu tradition. Then the local authority involved, or some local leader involved, and they said, okay, let's divide in half and half. This is a theory and this is a story. And that time they don't adopt that this is a new religion. They said the Sikhism is a part of the extension of the Hinduism, like there is a more than 97 different castes in a Hinduism. They said this is a new extension. But then the new leader came, time gone, then there was a fight between Hindu and the Sikhism in the beginning. So technically till today, the mostly Hindu, extremist Hindu, they still think or they still feel that the Sikhism is a part of the Hinduism. So they never adopt Sikhism as an independent religion. And secondly, they never adopt Sikhism as a new religion. And so this is an old ongoing crisis between religion and between culture. And this was always on a peak. This problem between Hinduism and Sikhism is not start from 1984 or 1982. It was ongoing problem from the beginning. And Khalistan was not a voice from 84 or 89 or after the partition of Pakistan and India. It was the movement even from many centuries ago. We are talking about 1700 and 1600. The Sikh always want independent country, and they used to have Raja Ranjit Singh was the king, or was the head of Punjab, joint Punjab, which include Pakistani Punjab and Indian Punjab. So this is just little background. to you to understand. So they have a long outgoing issue. But the recent development, which we are talking about, that new law by the BJP government, or you can call the Modi Sarkar or Modi government, which is affecting the almost all the Punjabi, you can say Sikh farmers. And first of all, this law from the parliament, it was passed by in a side doors, not by the state exercise. And secondly, when this law was passed, it was not passed by the concerns of the Punjabi Sikh or farmers. And the third thing, when the first time on the 1st November 2020, when the Sikhs from Haryana, they asked from the Haryana government for a protest against this new law. The BJP government run by the Haryana, they said no. Then the Sikhism, the Sikh or farmers, they do protest about 100 truck without government permission. And the Haryana government take a serious action and put almost from 100, they put 27 farmers in a prison for a long time. So this is where this campaign start. Rather than handling with this as a on a negotiation table, they take a BJP as in the past what the Narendra Modi done in Gujarat with the Muslims. They exactly deal with the same way, and they use a force, they use a power, and they try to bring force on the Sikh farmers. So this is the mishandling, just because the protesters are not a Hindu. Protesters are from minority. Protester was from Sikh culture. So they use a power, and no, they do not want, and especially when we call Indian, we will say the Narendra Modi government, the BJP government, what they have a past, they do not want to admit they done a blunder. So rather than admitting, they are putting more power and more pressure on farmers, so they will not change this new law. And when we look at the Hinduism, we already speak various time. There is the Hinduism have a different mind of set. They have a different thought procedure in about the other religions, even inside their own religion as well. I don't want to talk about that because I spoke yesterday very openly about Hinduism and about the Hinduism caste system and brotherly family system and tribe system. But when we look at the internationally, I want to mention one name I already mentioned yesterday. Sir, let me remind myself the name. It was Jaswant Singh. Jaswant Singh was a British Sikh, and in 1984 he went back to the India, and he said he involved in a local politics. He was a banker and he was a director in a local bank in Punjab. When he started his voice about the Sikhism, about injustice happening on a Sikhism, and he found that more than 25,000 Sikh youth are missing or might be killed by the Indian government. When he raised this voice, he got the threat from the Indian government He get that threat from the local police and a local establishment, and after a few years he was killed just because he raised the voice for a Sikh. The same thing, we have to understand how the Indian culture run and how especially the BJP government and Narendra Modi run the government. He's extremist without any doubt. He was the person who was refused to get the visa for America and Europe and a different part of the world. And when you Google about Narendra Modi and Google declare him as a terrorist #1 in India, but so-called democracy bring him in a power, and he's doing exactly what he was doing in Gujarat. So I believe the Sikhism, I agree with Dr. Sania. She said the Khalistan is not a popular in current Punjab in India, but is very popular on internationally. And on in 2020, last year, we have a biggest protest in Geneva from Sikh community from the worldwide. And the same thing, the next protest due in 2020 in Geneva as well about independent Khalistan. Because in India, they have a very strict about their government. They killed just in last 10 years, I'm talking about last 10 years, more than 18,000 Sikh youth are missing from the Punjab. Where they are, nobody knows. Why they are missing, we know. Because somewhere Indian government feel whoever Sikh will do protest, he is a Khalistani, or he is funding by the government of Pakistan, or he is funding by the international establishment. As Dr. Sania said, simply he's a terrorist. So he's not a Indian anymore. The same thing when this protest was started, the leading media from Indian industry, India media, and the leading leader, and Dr. Sania mentioned Kangra Rawat, they were start attacking on a protester. They were saying, oh, they are Khalistanis, they are the agent of international establishment, they want to break India, they want to, they work for ISI, or they work for a international establishment. They don't want to focus what they want. They tag them as a terrorist. And the photo which was shared by the Kangana Rawat, it was a fake, and it was a misleading photos. It was a not correct photo about the protester. And the same thing, there is a lady, she's a head of the media and social media for BJP, and she's a right hand for the Narendra Modi. She shared the video where the one Sikh was holding a Pakistani flag and shouting about Pakistan. She said, look, they are a Pakistani terrorist, they are funding by the government of Pakistan. But later on, that video was fake, and the video was from the UK protest outside the Indian embassy. So they are misleading, and they are putting the fire on this normal protester, and they are putting a fire on the people who are just demanding their right. Because the new law, I will, my colleagues describe very beautifully, but one thing, this new law is very good in the beginning. It will run very nicely in very few months or few years, but the price control government agenda will be dismissed or will be disappear after next 2 or 3 years. There will no middleman, or there will not government involved on the price control. Then the big factories and big companies will be in a power and manipulate the situation of farmers. So I believe we need to engage international community and the United Nations about this issue. And we have to be very clear that the Sikh in a, not only a Sikh, as my colleague Anna and Rama Bell mentioned about the Kashmir.
Excuse me, sir, can you conclude because we are going to be running out of time. Thank you.
Okay. That's okay. So we need to raise the issue as for humanity. And the last thing my colleague mentioned, this is a danger for India. Dr. Sania, I will extend that it's not danger for India, it's dangers for humanity. Thank you and very much.
Thank you for your speech, sir. We'll have the opportunity to hear you again with the final, so because we're now going to this part of the event. I now give the floor to Dr. Sania for the final thought. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all the comments from the worthy panelists, and I really appreciate if we are going to take this issue in the United Nations and our voices are the representing the suppressed community. Not only we're raising voices for the Sikhs, but also for the Kashmiris, and definitely being a part of the human rights organizations, we will raise the voices for all the suppressed community and against the violations of human rights. So thank you very much once again for inviting me.
Thank you, Dr. Sania Munir. Now I give the floor to Ms. Anna Christina Katu for her final thought. We can't hear you. You're unmuted. You're muted.
Sorry. Thanks for inviting me today. I strongly believe that human rights sector should be more protected and absolutely more established within the Indian society. And I hope that this is something that is going to be achieved soon, because I believe that this situation has been cherished for many years. I believe that if we try to change the situation, it's always going to be better. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss. Now I give the floor to Miss Ben for her final thought.
Thank you so much. As a human rights intern at the Universal Council of Human Rights, I would like to not stop at this event and this talk, but make these minorities' voice heard all over the world, bring it into the United Nations Council. And I have a little recommendation for the Indian government is by increasing training opportunities for police and judiciary in religious freedom and human rights, because it's all about humanity, and we all have that human side inside us that we can bring out in order to save humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss, for your thought. Now I give the floor to Mr. Rana Basharat for his final thought. You have the floor.
I'm back after a short break. First of all, I want to say, mostly these kind of international conference, they are very good, but sometime after the conference, we stop following up. I will request from my fellow team member, and especially Moise, that we need to take further action, and we need a roadmap who will handle this situation and who will bring this issue in United Nations floor and on international platform. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now we have reached the end of this extremely important session. I hope you all find this session insightful and useful at the same time, enjoying the discussion. I would like to thank all of you, our distinguished panelists, for sharing your insight and your thoughts about these matters. I want also to thank all the participants, without whom it wouldn't be possible and wouldn't have any interest of doing this. And as it was our last event, Zoom event, alongside this summit, I would like to thank all my colleagues, Sabah, Dr. Feroz and Moise and all the interns who are working in the Universal Human Rights Council and outside, who have contributed in various ways in organizing these debates, and have allowed to raise the human rights matters all around the world. And I think that, as you pointed out, Mr. Rana Basharat, we should, and with these debates, we have been able to raise these matters, and we will be able in the future to create something which is concretely a concrete action in order to defend those human rights with all these debates. So thank you everyone for your participation, and all for the participants who might have missed a session during this summit or wants to see one again. You can find all the records on our Facebook page and on YouTube to see all the events we have organized.